So good morning, everyone. We heard yesterday in the Parsha of the week concerning the ladder of Jacob, our forefather, Yaakov Avinu. And we have a principle: there are 70 faces to the words of the Torah. This dream is not just the dream of our forefather Yaakov, it's the dream which goes to the root of the connection between heaven and earth, between the spiritual and the material. So the ladder is placed on the earth, B'nei Sulam, and its head reached into heaven. And the angel of God, the Malachei, Elohim, they went up and they came down. So the minimum of Malachim, plural, is 2. So 2 angels went up and 2 angels came down. Or maybe all the 4 went up and down. But it would appear the way in which it's described, and that's how it's interpreted also, that there were 4 rungs to the ladder. Now, first on the individual level, because the whole concept of the forefathers, as we've often discussed, is Maaseh Ovesim Labonim. What happened to the forefathers is a premonition of what might happen to the descendants, but also it's a guide for the descendants. And we refer to them in our tefillot, the 3 forefathers, because after we say Elokeinu, our God, we've got to have our own desire to have a connection constantly with the Creator, who creates everything, every moment. And He also gives providence renewed at every moment to every human being. So, one of the explanations is, why do the angels go up first and then come down? They're the angels of God. Therefore, they're really sent by God. First they come down, then they go up. So why is this ladder first used by the angels to go up and then come down? So they say every mitzvah a person does, every good deed that he does, every even prayer that he brings from his own heart to reach closeness to the Creator is an angel. It becomes an angel. It's an angel sent by man to Hashem. The sages say, Ki malachav yitzavilach, Hashem has given you angels to guard you in all your paths. They say, what are these angels? They're a person who wears tzitzis and puts on tefillin. These are angelic but spiritual powers that are given to man, because each human being has got a tzelem Elokim. Similarly also all good deeds that a person does, deeds of loving kindness, and all prayers that he brings from the bottom of his heart to Hashem, it all goes up. So these are the angels we send to go up the ladder. And then Hashem sends us blessings from above. he responds. Hashem responds, just like about the forefathers, whose wives were barren. In order to have a child, they had to constantly pray, because that was the way in which Hashem can bring His power down to man. He wants human beings to use their power from below, to try and reach Hashem. So this applied to Yaakov Avinu, applies to all of us also. That's one of the interpretations which we find. Another one, which is the one brought by Rashi, why did they go up first and then they come down? Because, as even we know today, that Hashem's providence covers the people of Israel, especially the descendant of Yaakov, in a special manner. And in a more special manner, in Eretz Israel. I mean, the amount of miracles that take place here daily. And you'll find even in the mass media, they always speak of miracles, whether it's in the war, whether it's all the missiles and bombs and attempts that are made, even through suicide bombers and through the most advanced, trained terrorists from the enemies that surround us, and they have the desire to drive the Jews into the deep blue sea of the Mediterranean. And we find their bombs don't explode, or they explode in open places. Even more recently, I mean, perhaps we don't feel enough the enormous miracles that surround us. When it's quite clear now, there's a group that tried to use also the way of Doachu Ka'esh Kotzim, as it's mentioned in Tehillim, to light fires all over our land, which they also think some of them is their land, but they don't, just like they don't mind destroying themselves, killing themselves, and killing other innocent fellow Muslims at the same time, as long as they'll also hope to kill a few Jews. So also, they were starting to burn down the land. Although there were enormous losses, but not of lives, which is a great series of miracles. So we see, in the land of Israel, there is, in a way, even more protection through miracles than we find when they try to use bombs elsewhere. And think, Jewry all over the world, they're beginning to find out that here in Israel, in one way, people feel themselves more secure than in Europe and other places. Although the anti-Semitism here and the desire to remove the people from this land and to rewrite history and to try and say that it's all theirs and not ours. But we do find that here, in a certain way, there's a bit more security than you will find elsewhere. So these were the special angels when Yaakov Avinu, he was on the verge to leave the land of Israel. The land was promised to his forefathers and to his descendants, and was going to now to go into Golos. So the angels that accompanied him, there was a change of the guard. The angels accompanied him, they went up first. Who came down? The angels for Chutz La'aretz. They're different angels. I mean, this is a concept which is developed by the prophets, and especially in the visions of Daniel, that in the Golos of the nations of the world, where there's this constant streak until today of hostility towards the Jewish people. So Hashem also protects us. But the different level of protection is in the land of Israel itself, when the people of Israel live here. So therefore, that's the explanation that Rashi adopts. That's why they go up first, other ones come down. But now I'm going to come a bit nearer to understand the significance of the place itself. Where did this dream take place? Where was the stone on which Yaakov laid his head? Today there are usual interpretation is that stone is the rock of Oma. It's the place where the Beit HaMikdash would be built, or the Mizbeach. That's called Hamakom. Hamakom, Vayivga Bamakom, means really the place. And the sages say, what's the significance of this name which is used in the oral tradition as a name of Hashem himself? When we comfort mourners, we say, Hamakom yinachem etchem. What do you mean Hamakom? The place? The place brings you consolation? The answer is yes. Which place? The place where the Beit HaMikdash once stood and will be there in the future. Because that is the place where there's the possibility of being closest to the divine presence. And this place is recognized by the world also as being described and ultimately be fulfilled in the time of the redemption, the utopia envisaged by the United Nations, to that extent that they printed this verse from Micha and Yeshaya on the walls. There's going to come a time when the nations of the world will gather and they'll say, let us go up. And then it said, they want to go up on the mountain of the house of Yaakov. Because Yaakov called this place the home, the ultimate home. And they'll all recognize then, like King Solomon said when he gave the talk to consecrate the first temple. So he said, not only repeated what's mentioned in the Chumash, that through the sanctuary which ultimately came to rest on the Temple Mount, that is the place of the Beit HaMikdash where the Shekhinah is there all the time, the divine presence. And we see this today where not only Jews but Gentiles come to this place, and many of them say, here they feel the presence of Hashem. I've sometimes gone down to the Kotel with Jews, so Gentiles, Jews who say, we don't really believe there's a creator. We come from a place where the name of God was never mentioned, and we keep that name away from all our teachings. People would be influenced by atheistic communism, but they say when they come near the wall, they feel there's a higher presence. So even people who otherwise are not affected, they're affected when they come here, until today, as the sages have described it. So this is Hamakom. Unrin hamakom, hu makomo shel olam, ve'en ha'olam makomo. They say, because God is the place of the universe, He is the place. And ve'en ha'olam makomo. You cannot say that the universe that we know confines God's existence, which is called by the philosophers the concept of transcendence. In other words, Hashem's being is beyond time, space, and all things which are referred to, generally speaking, by makom. Makom is a place, a specific place which you can measure. You can describe it. But Hashem himself you can't describe. He's beyond speech. Now we know, for example, the Rambam in his great philosophical work, The Guide for the Perplexed, the first section is dedicated to explain that all references which have to do with apparent human qualities, which have to do with measurement, which have to do, let's speak in the day's terms, which have to do with time and with space and with matter, which are referred to when we speak about God, they're all anthropomorphism. That means you can't take them literally, because God himself is beyond language, but Torah dibra b'lshon b'nei Adam. The Torah which Hashem has given us gives us human terms so that we can relate also to the divine via the human. So this is the concept which is also brought to us, Sulam Mutzav Arza, the ladder whereby a person can reach the transcendence of Hashem. It has to be placed on the earth because we live a concrete life. And that concrete life for us is that which decides how we should live. If we're going to cut ourselves off from the concrete life and say we want to live a spiritual life alone, it cannot be done unless you're very firmly placed in the ground. It was done by Moshe Rabbeinu. 40 days and 40 nights, he did not live on the basis of food and drink and sleep. How was he able to do it? Because first, beforehand, he was so firmly rooted in the ground, and he recognized that there's a special mission he had to fulfill, to receive the Torah, which has at its root spiritual truths. So he went, if you want to compare to something today, like Abe Alexander, top professor of brain psychology, of neuropsychology, and a surgeon, professor at Harvard, who was constantly faced with near-death experiences of people who went into the coma, they were clinically dead, they came back, and they told episodes how they went into a different planet, which was not material at all, but they felt there a light and a love which they can't feel here on earth. And they were still able to have some contact with the earth. They saw things without eyes, and they heard things without ears. They were able to report them afterwards. And therefore he came out in the end when he had himself a clinical death, a severe meningitis, and he stopped functioning. He had it himself. And then he tried his best to say it's all an illusion. He couldn't do it. The reality was so clear, so he wrote a book of Proof from Heaven. And but with that we can understand better the Madrega Moshe Rabbeinu. Otherwise he came back to earth in a far more significant fashion than any near-death experiences of today. But we see such a thing does exist even today. Perhaps because the situation we're in today, in all aspects, so many elements which are mentioned in the Tanakh, and especially in the Chumash, which you always thought were metaphors of what might happen, Today they become literal. Today we don't live in the time of prophecy, but we do live in the time of the fulfillment of prophecy. And we can many scientific aspects which apparently are not referred to in Chumash. Today science is uncovering more and more truths that are mentioned already in the Torah Sheba'al Talmud, Torah Sheba'al Peh. So therefore, the fact that this is the significance of the Temple Mount, so according to tradition, that's the place from which the world was originally created. Place of the Beit HaMikdash. That is the place where Adam brought his offerings, Cain and Hevel, and then Noach, and Avraham, it's mentioned in the Chumash, place of the Akedah. So this place has enormous significance. And we might think, well, it happened once upon a time. But today we see what's happening, that the nations of the world, they're all concerned with Jerusalem and with Israel. And it become the most discussed aspect of what's happening today in all the mass media. And even though Christianity, of course, centered in Rome and so on, but still the main concern is also Jerusalem and Israel. And the Islam, which in the Quran, so the holy centers are Mecca and Medina, but it's been transformed. Today it's all Al-Aqsa. It's all a question of to whom does Temple Mount belong. We know for us the Temple Mount is sacred. The fact that we're not permitted to go on that mountain except for purposes of saving lives, but otherwise we have to know it's very holy. And you can only go up at a time when we are completely purified, which we are not today. We still have the presence of the Shekhinah at the Kotel. But going beyond the Kotel, you can only go for self-defense. And otherwise, then we know there are some who try to go to certain places and they try to keep all the different rules of purification. They're few in number, and they try to do it, but it's not in accordance with the halakha. And there are risks that by doing so, they're transgressing severe prohibitions of the Torah. Because for us it's something very holy. We've got to always know we're not on that stage yet where we can actually go and bring any offerings on the Temple Mount. But for us it's very holy. And what is really the root of its holiness? So I'm bringing you now two interpretations of the Midrash. What does it mean, the angels of God who go up? Who are they? They're the high priests, and the other priests. Olim v'yodim, because when they bring the offerings on the altar in the temple, to the altar, which is on height, they have to go up the kevesh, an inclined platform that leads them from the ground to the top of the altar. V'nei Hashem nitzov alav, and that is the power of Hashem is at the top. That's one interpretation. It's reference to the Avodat Beit HaMikdash, where they go up and down. Another explanation is, of the Chachamim, it's a reference to the most important event in the history of mankind, which is what?
Har Sinai.
Pardon?
Har Sinai.
Har Sinai. Numerical value of Sulam is equal to that of Sinai. Because they had also Mutzav Arza, the relation of Sinai, where were the people standing? They couldn't go up the mountain. It says, Vayityatzvu b'tachtei dahar, the bottom of the mountain. In other words, they had to know, we have to have our feet on the ground. The revelation, Hashem came down, but when he Rosho Magia Shamayma, the head of the ladder reached heaven, where it says the mountain was burning with fire, to the heart of the heavens. And they say, who are the Malachi Elohim who go up? These are the prophets, Moshe and Aaron, who were permitted to go up. And Moshe went up, even Hashem would speak with him. Where he was for 40 days. So he went right up to Sinai. Olim, they went up, that was Moshe. Because it says in the prelude to the giving of the Torah, it says Moshe went up to a message from Hashem which he brought to the people. So it says Moshe went up to the top, to the mountain, Hashem gave him a message, and he came down as well. Vayered Moshe, then he came down to deliver the message to the people that you're going to become the kingdom of priests and the holy nation, where it says Keli kol haaretz, because I want the whole earth to come to me. How can the earth come to me? Hashem, from the beginning of creation, he was keen that mankind should be his partner in transforming this globe to a Garden of Eden. So when Adam sinned, and Cain Hevel sinned, and then even the generation of the deluge sinned, you see, even Noah wasn't able to save the world until Avraham Avinu. So here's a person who can save the world. So Avraham Avinu, when he went on the mountain, he called it, this is the Har Hashem, this is the mountain of Hashem. And through Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, it will ultimately become an inheritance for the people of Israel, and through them for the whole world. So this is the question, if it's Sinai, so why do we say the place was the Har Hashem? The place was Yerushalayim. How can it be Yerushalayim and Sinai, one is far from the other? But this we can answer with another question. Because what happened after the giving of the Torah? What happened to the mountain of Sinai? About 30 years ago, a lady from America, a rich lady, she made a campaign in all Israel to put up the 10 Commandments in every possible place. She also came to our yeshiva and gave us something. We should put on the entrance of the yeshiva a copy of the Aseret HaDibrot, which we did. Very important. And because she also knows, even in America, in many of the places, it depends on what each state and what each educational institution wants to do, but there are many places that put up the 10 Commandments, because they know the 10 Commandments, they still contain certain more or less absolute morality, not to transform all values to be regarded as just relative values. It's got a certain authority in the Western world. She wanted to introduce into Israel. Then she wanted someone to go and put up a copy of the 10 Commandments on what is assumed to be the mountain of Sinai. So my son Avram, meanwhile has been a chaplain in the US Army also, but this story people don't know, not everybody. She said she'll pay a certain amount of money. At that time you could still get there, mountain of Sinai. And this is the mountain that's identified already by Rabbi Yaakov Emden and by others. The same mountain where there's the monastery which is generally regarded as Sinai, but no proof, so that's the one. There is a certain indication, because Sinai is from the root snare, the burning bush. And the rocks of that mountain, they all have a fossil image of a bush. Yeah, which it's, and you can say, well, it's like when there's a volcanic eruption, then frequently all the plants that are found on that volcano, they immediately become fossilized, and you can see them on the rocks. So this is probably the right one, because there was a snare, and that's where the first revelation took place of Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu, the snare. Anyway, he made a big placard, and he took it there. He was always keen to go exploring. He was a youngster. And he put up the Ten Commandments. But how can you say that that is the place where Yaakov Avinu had the dream? The dream was on the Har HaBayit. The stone was at the top of the Har HaBayit, where he slept and had the dream. He said, Ein zeh kim beit Elokim v'zeh sha'ar shamayim. On the basis of these two midrashim, we can also understand Beit Elokim means the place where the power of God becomes a home for mankind and for the people of Israel. It's the real home of the soul, of the human being. And also, Sha'ar Shamayim is the place through which the prayers of the people of Israel from below can reach the top, which is expressed by the Avodat Hashem of the priests in the Beit HaMikdash, and with all our tefillot. So these are the two aspects, Beit Elokim v'Sha'ar Shamayim. But the question still remains, how does Sinai get to the Beit HaMikdash? Now this is described in detail by the great thinker and Perush on the Chumash of the Ramban. Ramban says it in many places. He says that the place of divine revelation was Sinai, but after the Ma'amad HaSinai, after the great event where the people of Israel, 3 million of them, they heard what God said. Partly they heard directly, and partly they could only hear through Moshe Rabbeinu. So what happened afterwards? After Mount Sinai, the holiness of that mountain disappeared. It's no longer holy. But where did it continue? In the sanctuary. It was transferred from the mountain into the sanctuary which the people of Israel had to build. And from the Kruvim, the cherubs, he said, that were glowing with gold, were like the fire on top of the mountain. And from the cherubs, Hashem kept on speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu to give him all the Torah mitzvot and all the laws of the Torah were given from there. And that Mishkan, sanctuary, where the Shekhinah dwelt with the people of Israel, it moved to different places until it came to the seventh place, El Amluch Vel Nachala, on Har Tzion, on the Har HaBayit. That's where it remained. So therefore, Sinai was transformed and changed over to the Har HaBayit. So the Har HaBayit not only contains the pillar of Avodah, it also contains the pillar of Torah. Both of them. They have become identified, one with the other. So this is the deep teaching of the Shekhinah continuing. And the Rambam says, even though the halacha is like this, what is the state, halachically speaking, of the holiness of the land of Israel, with all the laws? In principle, there's a holiness, a general holiness, that was given already to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and remains eternally. But halachically speaking, most of Eretz Israel was taken by conquest. That which was taken by conquest when the Babylonians, first Sanherib, the Assyrians, and then the Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians, they banished all the Jews, and they conquered the whole land, became part of their empires, the holiness went away. Because what was attained through conquest will disappear when the conquest breaks down and becomes taken over by other countries, other empires. So it's finished. And it's only the second one, the temple which was built, that's the significance of Hanukkah also to do with this. The second temple was without conquest. And therefore, the areas that were taken over by Ezra and Nehemiah, they remain in their full holiness forever. But what was taken by conquest, no more holiness. But the Rambam says, Yerushalayim's holiness can never become destroyed, because there the Shekhinah remains forever. So, now this is, also I want to go a bit deeper in this, to bring you here from Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chava, who is one of the main exponents of the Vilna Gaon's Kabbalah. So he says that the ladder seen by Yaakov in his dream and the revelation of Sinai it tells us it can't be achieved until all Jews are completely united in their devotion to God and His service. It can be compared to the human body, made up of different limbs and parts. Each part is significant. If there's discord among the limbs, they don't fulfill their appointed task. The soul departs and the person's life comes to an end. The same applies to the Jewish nation. Millions of individuals, each created to serve a unique and vital need of the nation as a whole. As long as they all work together, God's presence can be amongst them. And this was also shown, how could God reveal His will to the people of Israel? It was all expressed in the verse which says that, it says, Vayavovu bnei Yisrael al Har Sinai, they came to Har Sinai, in the plural. There's Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged Ahar. When they're opposite the mountain, it says in the singular, that Yisrael, they became one nation. They decided to become unified completely. And the whole people said, when they were asked, are you willing to go into the covenant? It says, Kol Echad, with one voice they said, Na'aseh v'nishma. And that unity of the people of Israel, that's what produced the ability for Hashem to reveal His Torah. Because without unity of the nation, it can't be achieved. And the soul of the people derives from Yaakov, and the nation is given his name, Yisrael, the whole nation. So Yaakov's connection to God's divine presence is affected by the unity, or the lack of it, of Jewish people. And that's why when Yaakov Avinu was on his deathbed, his main concern was, are all the tribes united? We know that Jews have a tendency of individualism, and certainly dividing into different groups, and that we find already by the 12 tribes. But the concept of 12 tribes had to build it together, even when they were still just becoming formed into a common clan. Describes the souls of the people of Israel, Shivim Nafesh. There were 70, doesn't say souls, but one soul, that formed one soul, all together. And therefore, Why do we say Shema Yisrael? So just say, when he was afraid maybe there's going to be splits amongst the nations, amongst the different groups, amongst the people of Israel, and they would split in different groups, so the Shekhinah left him. And this maybe there's disunity amongst you. When all of them said, Shema Yisrael, listen, Yisrael, our Father, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, we're all united to accept Hashem from different angles. We've got to work together. Because unity is not uniformity. Because each person and each group and each tribe have got different characteristics. But we've all got to work together to create harmony. So this is the deep concept. So that is the message of unity. Is the one the Midrash interprets the dream of the ladders reference to Sinai. They should become K'ish Echad B'Lev Echad. So this is a very basic concept of this dream of Yaakov Avinu, which was to bring service of Hashem and coming near to Him together with Torah Hashem, which is the mission of the people of Israel, to demonstrate to the world, and ultimately this concept of unity will come to all mankind, and they'll stop fighting one another. Instead of that, all the nations, as it says in the prophets, they'll join together, L'Avdu Shechem Echad, as Shlomo HaMelech said, that V'Hayotim and HaKodshi, I'll bring all mankind to my holy mountain. It says not only for Jews, also for Gentiles. You'll all recognize me. We've come the house of prayer for all mankind. So we'll have to, at this point, we don't have any time left for questions. There's perhaps two brief questions.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
The change of guards of Yaakov, the angels going up and going down, and the concept of the Har Sinai and the Har Bayit, Benji's transferring. Many years ago, you mentioned in the Shiur that when a tzaddik comes from another land, he doesn't have to bring with him anything. He can start his life anew in Israel with none of his possessions that helped him. Is it connected to this concept?
Well, it's happened to Yaakov Avinu. Yeah. Yaakov Avinu, Kiva Makli. I mean, he said he had to go into Golos, and he prayed to Hashem that even if you'll give him just a garment to wear and bread to eat, he'll dedicate himself to follow Hashem. So it's hinted in those words that you can always start again, Eretz Yisrael. But he was even given a big blessing because he preserved his constant closeness to Hashem even when he was in the Galut.
Yeah, so small question.
Yes.
So there's a halacha in the beginning of Orach Chaim, the royal lechol yirei shomayim lios meitza v'doyeg al churban Beis Hamikdash. That it's a madrega for a person to feel the loss that we don't have the Beis Hamikdash. So can we condone then some of the actions of people who show at least an interest in the Beis Hamikdash, the fact that they've got an aspiration to go up and to daven there, and they maintain themselves as Fruma Yidden? So even though we know it's neged halacha, but is it better to have that feeling rather than to be intransigent and people don't even show any interest on the Makam HaMikdash?
Well, yes, I think it's our duty but on everyone lechav zechut, and but still, every Jew has to feel responsible for his fellow Jews, even those who there's a minority view. There's certain places which don't have the kedusha of the Har Bayit, and some want to rely on it, and therefore the fact many of them, they keep everything on a high level, make sure they go to the mikveh properly, they don't wear leather shoes and so on, all sorts of different halachot which they have to fulfill in order to retain that presence. On the other hand, they are the cause that many others go up and think if they can do it, we'll also do it. And the others are doing it, as you say, because they want to keep the Jewish presence known, but look, quite apart from the many of the poskei halacha, and even let's say the person who was behind these attempts was Tziesh Kalisher, who was a big Talmud Chacham in his time. In his time, it was done on the condition.
Approval.
No, it was a condition that the Muslims are not being provoked thereby.
Yeah.
Because there have been different periods. Since the time the Mufti of Jerusalem, even the slightest act you do in that way is a real danger to the life of fellow Jews. So it's even something, I mean, if they only look at it even from the realistic political aspect. In other words, it's forbidden for us to do actions which, we have an English saying, let sleeping dogs lie. So, to go and provoke, because today, you just need a little provocation. We do know that Ishmael's characteristic is a peri Adam, is wild. And therefore, if you're going to do some action might provoke them, that's why they'll come with a, let's say it's here in Hanof, we're experienced. Unfortunately, people who seem to be quite decent, moderate Muslims, but they're all affected by this wildness. And they'll come with their knives and their axes to go and chop down innocent Jews in the middle of prayer. And what's they're shouting? Al-Aqsa. In other words, because they feel the Jews, they want to, they know that de jure, it belongs to the state of Israel. De facto, it's under the charge of the Muslims, the Waqf. That they think if the Jews, there are some hotheads that go there, create provocations that produce these murderous deeds. So we have to, it's not only a question of transgressing the laws of going there Tuma, but also risking lives of hundreds of people. I mean, no, I think we have to, there's another shir now, next week's Pasha, but tomorrow I'll give time before the shir.
Okay, go ahead.